talk about today is clinical research, what I call clinical research informatics and data management. I've been trying to get this started for quite a long time, and I developed a business plan about a year ago that was submitted and reviewed by way too many people. And what has happened is it's become a very large activity now. NYU is going to, Langone that is going to establish what's called a DataCore. And clinical research data management will be a key component of that core. There will also be the electronic data warehouse will be in that core. And in addition to that, there will be another component that is going to be working with large-scale databases, things for services type research, epidemiological type things. But this is going to be the key component, and the concept has been approved by the dean. We're in the process of getting funding. We're in an overall director of the core has been hired, and hopefully some staff will be hired shortly. Right now there are no staff, and I've proposed and conceptualized the program, but I'm only going to be working basically as a consultant to try to help people get the services they need. So for those of you from CHIBI, the alternate topic is whatever you want to say, does Jim do? I've been asked this for about three years, and what I'm going to tell you about is what I do. So here's the primary objective. Basically, I view myself as a research support person, and my pet peeve, especially at Langone, has been I didn't think there's been enough support provided to researchers. And we say clinical research, and the only reason I say that is the stuff that I'm going to talk about doesn't really help much for animal research, but certainly for most other types of research, not just clinical services research, that type of thing, it's applicable. So the overall and primary objective is to provide more support to the Langone investigators. And we have a model, and this is the model that we're using to build from. As you know, NYU has a very substantial technical infrastructure, highly secure. They have informatics software. By that, I'm going to explain to you, or at least tell you, what is available to be used here. They have things like RedCap, Velos, SharePoint, and things like that. The group that I have proposed to implement this program is what I call software agnostic. I don't want that group to be specifically dedicated or in bed, so to speak, with any particular software package. And I am pushing very hard to expand the informatics products here. And the idea is to have many informatics products that are supported by IT, but the clinical research data management program will be expert in trying to pick the right one for each particular research study. We need a wider array. As I said, we are in the process. I've written job descriptions for 4 different types of people. Actually, I should say I've been doing this for more than 35 years, and I wanted to start out with 4 different specialists. Another place where I work, I actually have 10 or 12 different specialists, highly specialized people. And what this center will ultimately be, or this core, will have enough expertise so a little bit of expertise can be applied to each research study to keep the cost down. You know, for example, when I do a grant, I work at the Nathan Klein Institute. When I do a grant at the Nathan Klein Institute, typically there are about 10 different specialists, but the whole full-time equivalent, FTE, is just about 1 or a little over 1. So you use a little bit, and we can do that because we share things across so many different grants and projects. What I'm going to talk about today is pretty much the services that have been defined and are agreed to, and what I really need to do is get you all to utilize this program in your research studies. There's a lot of things that are going to be done for you and a lot of things that are done at no cost. So the ultimate goal of this program is to improve and hopefully maintain the highest possible level of data integrity in the research projects being carried out at Langone. And even though we talk about data management, everybody thinks they do data management, and to a certain extent they do, but they don't do data integrity monitoring, which requires a lot more effort than just having an electronic data capture system that edits your data. It requires expertise in how to review data, to look at data longitudinally, to look at outliers, and a lot of that. So even though the overall objective is to support clinical research investigators, the overall priority is data integrity. That's really what this program is all about. So these are the services that have been agreed to be provided. We will help with any grant or protocol development. We can help a little bit with design. We're not total experts in design, but I've been doing this so long I can provide some assistance. But we certainly can help you with the actual data management or data integrity monitoring portion of the grant. We can help you develop a schedule of assessments or procedures. We actually have a number of templates that I'll describe in a little bit later where we can, I actually did a grant for one of the departments here over the weekend, last weekend. We can do this very, very quickly. The most time-consuming part is the budget. So any grant or protocol you want to do, feel free to get in touch with me, either via email. I'm on the CHIBI website, I'm on the CTSI website, and my telephone number, my email address is there. We will also come out and provide any consultation to any project. Now, what does that mean? It means if you send us something, we'll read anything and everything. We'll come in and we'll talk to you about the project. We'll provide advice and help you in any way we can. We'll also take a look at your forms if you're using paper. We're experts in developing quality clinical forms, and there's a lot of expertise involved in designing forms so they really collect comprehensive and accurate data. And if you are using paper, where the rubber really hits the road, so to speak, in your research study is getting the data onto those forms. So it's very important that they be designed correctly. Same for screens if you're doing total electronic data capture. We'll help you with that. We'll also provide consultation on the electronic data capture, not only the selection of it, but right now IT's job is just to provide these products. What I want this program to do is to be able to answer questions for people that are using them. If you're doing the do-it-yourself version, I want you to be able to call up and have people say, no, don't do it that way, do it this way. And so it's ongoing consultation as well. Now realize we can't limit it, so it has to be some limit to that. But I want this group to have an expertise that can help the investigators and the research team build electronic data capture systems. Well, we're also planning a lot of education and training. This is just the beginning. I'm trying to develop a course on the principles of data management, how to actually implement data integrity monitoring, how to develop a quality electronic data capture system, how to develop forms. All those are educational programs that we hope to develop. Now, everything that I just talked about that's in yellow is free. It's free. So if you're contemplating a research project, to be blunt, and I hope not offensive, you would be silly not to take advantage of these services. They're all free, and when in the business plan I developed, I was very clear to the executives at Langone to indicate that these services need to be provided and they can't be reimbursable, okay? So they're aware of it. That's the way the budget's been developed. So please try to take advantage of these. Contact me for anything that's listed there. Now the last three, if we have to actually develop an electronic data capture system for your study, or we actually conduct the data management and the data integrity monitoring, we're going to have to charge for that. That's a fee-for-service basis, okay? We'll also develop registries and databases for people. Right now I've been contacted just in the last 2-3 weeks for 3 different databases and registries that we're providing consultation on and may may actually develop. So this is the array of services. Again, I strongly suggest you take advantage of them. So let's talk about what we can do for your grant, okay? Because we've been extremely successful in the past in getting grants funded. And I believe very, very strongly, if you let us work with you, we will strengthen your grant proposal and we will increase the probability of you getting funding. Now, I don't want to be egotistical. The main thing is going to be your science, of course. But we are actually, in grants that we've submitted, getting positive comments that the approach to data management that we are now implementing, it's highly unusual, but on one grant we recently submitted through cardiology, we actually had 2 of the 3 investigators give us positive comments. So we know what we're doing, we have templates. So, whoops, where am I going, backwards here? No. Okay, so the first thing we'll do is we'll want to review what you're doing. We really strongly want to understand what you're doing. We don't need to understand all the science, but we need to understand what your approach is and what data you want to collect. So again, as I said earlier, we can help you with study design. We'll do the data management text for the grant or protocol. We'll add a little bit about the importance of data quality assurance, and we'll talk about the actual data monitoring methodology. We can also give you a description of the electronic data capture system. We'll help you develop a very nice color-coded, geometrically coded schedule of assessments. Does everyone know what that is? That's an indication of what data you're going to collect when, or what forms will be completed at what time point in the study or visit. And if there's any unique technologies, we'll review those for you as well. And we will do all of this, and you don't have to use the Clinical Research Data Management Program to provide the services. If you can't afford it, we understand that, but we'll still help you do all of this and develop the grant. Now, even though it sounds like a lot, we have templates that provide most of these things. For example, the data management, data quality assurance, and data integrity monitoring text is about a half to a 3/4 of a page in most grants. Because you know most grants now are only 12 to 25 pages. So that's only about a half to 3/4 of a page. But what we do is we provide you with an appendix that describes the data management methodology, about 6 or 8 pages. We also have something in there about the electronic data capture system, and ultimately we're going to have a separate appendix that describes the electronic data capture system. The reason we have these appendices is if you do get a rigid or an obsessive compulsive reviewer, these appendices in the grant don't count towards your pages for most submissions, and it's been very useful because it describes everything we're going to do, and it's about as comprehensive as you could possibly get. So all of this is available. We can do all of this very, very quickly. We would like a little bit of time, if possible. The thing that takes the most time is if we actually develop budgets. Let me talk briefly about budgets. Just to keep you in the ballpark, the average cost for developing an electronic data capture system completely, that includes forms, the edits, the reports for your study and everything, and conducting comprehensive data integrity monitoring, runs typically, according to the literature, about 18% of the total budget. So if you're going to do this very comprehensively, it's not cheap, I'm going to tell you right now. Now, that doesn't mean you have to do it that way. I'm going to offer other options, down to and including no cost. But that's the typical cost, 18%. Our goal at Langone is to do it for 12%. And so far, we've been successful in doing it for 12% on about 80% of the grants we've been developing. Can't do it for everything because it depends on the size and scope of the study. Basically, how much data you're going to collect, how many research participants you're going to have. So it does vary. Any questions on any of this? Sure.
Why would this depend on the number of participants? I mean, once I have the templates and all this stuff, I could either have a clinical trial of 10 people or 50.
No, that's the error in thinking you're doing data management. You're doing data editing, and you're entering the data and editing it. You still need people to be reviewing that data. You need people to talk to the research personnel to say, This is missing, can you get it? This looks questionable, do you think this is right? So there's an ongoing piece. You are correct. The electronic data capture costs are mostly upfront in the first 2 or 3 months of the study. Of course, you have to maintain that, and there may be some additional costs with new reports. But the actual monitoring of data integrity is done by specialists, and my people actually look at every record, okay?
So you're saying that just the monitoring is 18% of your?
No, I'm saying everything. Everything, from starting with helping you develop your protocol, to finalizing that even after you're funded, to developing forms, to developing the electronic data capture system, to developing all the reports for operational purposes, study management purposes, data safety monitoring board purposes, and then actually monitoring the data from all the way to the end of the study, to locking the database and providing it to the statisticians for analysis. That whole thing is 18%, and we're doing it for 12. Okay? Anybody else? It's a very common thing what you just said, and this is why I said, you know, most people, a lot of people, not most, I don't say most, a lot of people at NYU are not really monitoring the data. They're entering it and they're editing it and they're storing it, but they're not monitoring. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. This is just to show you how we actually structure forms. We believe in a lot of structure. We try to avoid text where possible. Text is okay if you really need it, but there's not a whole lot you're going to do with it in analysis. It can add a little added attraction. We don't use lines, we use boxes. We structure everything because it makes it more legible, and the ultimate thing is all of this structure will end up, hopefully, well, we know it does, ends up with more comprehensive, complete data. We actually, by the way, where we can, try to make the screens on the electronic data capture system look as much like the paper forms, if you're using them, as we can, because it provides an easy transition from paper to data entry. These are the products that are available to you right now, okay? Does anyone know about Qualtrics? Qualtrics is a survey type system. It's hosted by NYU. It's available for use. RedCap is the electronic data capture system that is the do-it-yourself version here. It was developed by Vanderbilt University and is in use by hundreds, literally hundreds of universities, and it's being pushed through the Clinical Translational Science Awards or Institutes. Embedded SharePoint is sort of a glorified version of Excel. I don't typically recommend it, but if you have something really small and certainly not requiring a lot of regulatory concerns, that's an option that's to you. And Velos is the large, heavy-duty system that was brought in here to do large-scale clinical trials and large-scale studies. RedCap is recommended for small to medium, and a lot of people are using RedCap for registries, and Velos is recommended for the larger studies. Just to give you an idea of how we try to structure screens, basically, I'm sure I don't have to say this, we like to have online real-time editing for everything. So, and we don't like to store bad data. So we tell you right off the bat if the data is either missing or it doesn't meet the editing criteria, doesn't fit with the response codes. But this is pretty typical. There's nothing new about that. We can also help you with reports. We have a concept called an integrated data cleanup report, where we incorporate everything that's either missing, questionable, or in error. And we can organize this report around how you're conducting your study operationally. Typically, we organize this report, if you're doing forms, you probably have a case report form booklet. So we actually develop this so it's organized by research participant, by visit, by form within visit. These are just examples. I really like these. We're trying to build these into all the systems. This is actual versus projected enrollment. I like to have graphs where we can. And we also have a lot of performance measures that we're beginning to try to standardize how we collect and monitor this now. Those are just some quick examples. In addition to the electronic data capture products, Langone also, Research IT also has Oracle, which is a large-scale database, and SQL Server. They are the two primary databases that are around, and Oracle has front ends and things that you can develop screens to develop registries and whatnot. So, what's the trick here? The trick is to try to utilize everything I've talked to you about so far, and yet provide it to you at a cost that you can afford. I very much understand it's extremely difficult to do everything that you need to do in an R01, even for $500,000. And if it's a multi-site study, it becomes virtually impossible to do everything for $500,000. If you're talking about an R34 or an R21, you really can't afford it. So we want to provide some options for you. So we've come up with 4 options. We call it the do-it-yourself option, and then we've got basic, intermediate, and comprehensive. The do-it-yourself option is you as a research team or study team develop your own system in REDCap. How do you do that? Well, right now, there are educational materials out there, but it's all web-based and video-based. I'm hoping to develop some additional training programs that provide a little bit more structure and whatnot. And as I also told you, we want to do some hand-holding. So, but people are doing this. There's several people I've worked with who are actually building systems in REDCap. But then you have to conduct your own data management. If it's free, nothing's free. It's going to cost you. So it's going to cost you and your team the effort to develop the system. It's going to cost you and your team this. But we will provide some training for you to teach you what the key things are in actually conducting data management. So that's no cost. If you have a little bit more money, the Clinical Research Data Management Program will build the actual electronic data capture system for you. And obviously that's the key cornerstone. You need to have that built to catch as many things as possible and to have options for you to query things and document things. But then we'll train you, but you have to conduct the actual data monitoring, okay? So this is similar to what you said. Here you're paying the upfront cost and a little bit more maintenance, but then you have to do the ongoing actual monitoring of the data. We actually just recently did this for a very, very senior investigator. They got a grant, but they didn't have enough money in the grant, which happens a lot. And they said, well, what can we do? So we said, well, here's the do-it-yourself version. And they said, well, we really don't want to do that. So we built the system for them and then turned it over. So there's upfront cost, and then they're doing it themselves. If you want to go a little bit further, we can build the system for you, and we can actually monitor critical data. Critical data is what? Well, you as the investigator or research team need to define that, but typically it would be outcome and safety measures. So my team would monitor that rather than all the data. We would still train you on how to monitor the rest of the data, and then we would periodically look over your shoulder to make sure things are getting done and done on time. Okay, last but not least, and I'm not going to go into this in detail, I just want to show you the extensiveness of what we think needs to be done to have comprehensive data integrity monitoring. We break it into 3 phases: study preparation, ongoing data management, and closeout. In preparation, a lot of this will look the same. We will review the protocol, make suggestions to you, make sure it's clear, make sure that it matches throughout. We will develop a data management plan, which is who's responsible for doing what. What are the programmers going to do? What are the data managers going to do? What's the coordinator going to do? What's the PI going to do? What are the research assistants going to do? You don't have to take detailed notes. I'll send anybody that wants these slides, by the way. So, we'll actually develop the forms for you. We will pilot test the forms, make sure they work. We will develop data dictionaries, which is the specification. I'm not going to go into detail, but it's specifying the data. Every form has to have a definition of each data item, what it is, what it means, what you check, what are the responses that are allowed, not allowed, what type of data is it. We'll do that. We'll develop the electronic data capture system. We'll pilot test the system, and we'll teach you how to use the data system and how to do what the research team's responsibilities are for data integrity monitoring. So we're doing all that in study preparation. And in my mind, the most important component of conducting data management is to do this right. It doesn't complete everything, but it sets the foundation for everything. Now you get into what's going on, and this will relate a little more to your question, okay? Yes, we're going to do electronic data editing, online, real time. I am a big proponent, and I've been developing informatics products, including electronic data capture systems and interviewing systems for 35 years. And I think we should do as much as we can, but there's never a study that we say, damn, we missed that, or we didn't do that. And so we do as much as we can, but my people actually review each individual record. Doesn't take a lot of time, but it does. They pick up things that may not be out of bounds, so to speak, with your editing criteria, but we might see blood pressures going up. Not out of bounds, but maybe you want to take a closer look at the patient if the blood pressure is going up. We see values that may, some things can be from 0 to 100, but we may say these just don't look right. So we actually question that and query them. So we review each record, and on a daily basis, we try to review what I call critical, which is, I like out of the system to say, hey, these outcome measures and these safety measures were entered yesterday. Take a look at them right away and make sure everything's okay. So they will develop queries on anything that we find that is questionable or any error or missing data that's not responded to. We typically wait for 7 days, and if the research team hasn't fixed something that's a problem, we query them. Now, you may not be able to fix it. That's okay, but then we mark it not able to be fixed, so to speak. We'll also monitor things for timeliness, completeness, and accuracy. What does that mean? We typically know when a form was completed. They all have a date, right? Well, guess what? In almost any electronic data capture system, the date and time that it was processed is there. So we know how quickly you're entering data. We like data entered same day. Certainly, our objective is 48 hours. So we check that. How timely are you? And we actually we establish up front agreements with the principal investigator, because each study can be different. And if you're all over the place, it could take you a week. But we then monitor how much of the data that's entered has met whatever criteria we establish. 48, 72, 7 days. We also look at what the percentage of completeness is. Now, what does that mean? It means we know how many forms are in, we know how many aren't in. So we know the percentage of forms that were completed. We can also get it to the data element level. And we also know what's either been determined as not fixable or inaccurate and not entered. So we have all these things, and that was some of those bar graphs I showed you before. So the data managers do all this as well. We also do what I call longitudinal data review. If you have a repeated measures, which many studies do, like I said, we'll look at them horizontally and see if they're going up, going down, or something, and maybe it's okay, and most of the time it is, and if not, we'll question it. We also do outlier analysis is easy to do. People don't do it. You can throw say you have something that's scored, that's the easiest one. You can throw it and you can see which one's out here, and so someone should take a look at that. We also do what's called data audits, which are incredibly valuable. What does that mean? It means that if you're using paper, we actually compare what's on the paper to what's in the electronic data capture database. And we typically do this after the first couple of research participants to make sure that everything's okay. You'll be surprised. We find some forms aren't quite right, so we modify the forms. But we do this. It used to be for pharmaceutical companies. They wanted to do it for 100%. We'll also look at how the sites are performing and actually, in terms of that timeliness and completeness. If we have to, we'll go out. We start out with weekly data management conference calls, and then we back off to every 2 weeks. We typically don't go more than that, but sometimes, depending on the study, we could go monthly. But there's always contact between the data management team and the research team. We really view it as partners, and we really view us as working for the team. but having responsibility for the data. And then here's a key thing. We actually lock individual records. What does that mean? Well, many places still today wait until the whole study is done and then say, I have to lock this whole database because the statistician won't take it until we lock it. What we do is we actually lock each record as we go, and we can't lock a record if it has any problem. If it has an outstanding query, or if it has anything that's missing that's not been documented as missing and will stay missing. And I actually use this as a performance measure for my data management personnel. I look at the percentage of locked records compared to the percentage of records entered, and I have a performance measure. And the real reason we do this is our goal is to lock the final database in less than 2 weeks from the last participant visit. Why? Time is money. And we want to get the data to the statisticians to get the data analyzed. Now, my people can't do this on their own. It requires, obviously, the cooperation of the research team as well. And then the final study closeout's easy. We just lock what's left, we lock the database, and we give it to the statistician. So everything I just went over is in that appendix I told you we put in grants. So again, I can't stress enough, it's been successful. We recently got 3 grants funded here. We just got a decent score on a 60-site grant that hopefully will get funded on a resubmission. And we've just been asked by an outside company, sole source, to do a multi-site clinical trial. So it's starting to heat up what we're doing. There are a few other things I want this group to do, and they're all designed to help the research teams, okay? We want to establish a forms library. What does that mean? It means that you shouldn't have to develop everything from scratch. This is silly, right? I probably have 1,000 forms that I've used over the years. So we want to take those and put them in a library with keywords that you can search for, and it's not that you have to use the form, but at least it's a template for you. So you can get that form out, it'll be in Word, and you can modify it if you want. I usually suggest try to use it, and if you want more, add it to the bottom. And the reason I do that is, in addition to actually the form, if we programmed that form, we can give you the code. So if you're doing the do-it-yourself thing with RedCap, and you say, okay, I'll take this demographic form, bingo, here's the code, you don't have to write any program. And I'll tell you the truth, there's very little reason why demographic, diagnostic, concomitant medication, adverse event, all those types of forms are pretty much the same. You know, there's no reason to be different unless you want to be. So I'm hoping we can ease the burden for those of you who even want to do it yourself by providing hundreds of forms with the code behind it, so that you can just cut and paste, so to speak, like you do in Word, only you do it in an electronic data capture system. And you have the screen, the editing, the database, and the paper, all in one. We're pushing very hard. We're only one piece, but NYULMC's got to establish data standards, standard codification, standard usage, those types of things. There's not enough of it. The whole idea here is to be able to share data across research studies, certainly across departments if you want, and even across the medical school. You can't do that if things aren't defined in the same way. And last but not least, I'm suggesting that periodically we conduct data audits of studies, not to be negative, not to be punitive, but to try to help researchers by randomly selecting a study and comparing what they're doing with what's in the database, what's on paper if that's used, and providing advice and recommendations to help improve things. So those are the things that we hope to be doing as soon as we get some staff. They're almost byproducts of the work we're going to do anyway, except for the data standards. We already have a data auditing methodology. I actually already have an informatics product that you enter what you found, and it tells you what percentage of data on each form was the same. It's not accuracy, it's consistency, by the way, because I can't tell if it's right or wrong. I just know if it's the same. So what percentage of each form, what percentage for each visit or time period, what percentage for the overall study. can do it by site if it's a multi-site thing, and it's really quite easy to do. And especially, that's one of the other reasons why we try to have the screens look like the forms, because you can just sit there and go bing, bang, boom. And then, you know, you can do a form in seconds, literally, in seconds. So those are the other things we hope to do in this program, hopefully shortly. And so the real issue here is we need you to come to us so we can help you. We'll help with any grant, any study, any contract, any registry, or any database. Come and talk to us. I've been going around doing this presentation pretty much for each department, and things are really starting to heat up. There's a lot of interest out there. People really want to do things better, and they really want help. And I'm hoping those services that I mentioned early on, especially the free ones, you'll take advantage of, because that'll help you whether or not you're able to take advantage of the services we offer. Questions, please. Comments? Put everybody to sleep?
No.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say that I'd love to get a copy of the presentation, and
It's not a problem.
as somebody who's used RedCap for a number of different systems, you know, an NYU kind of forms database or forms registry for using could save a lot of work.
It absolutely could. And not only us, I don't understand why we can't get them from the other 500 RedCap users. We're not unique. You know, we're all sharing. We're all academic partners. But you're right. But I'm talking about that not just being for RedCap, but for other things too, because I want to save myself work.
Yes. No.
I want to save myself work. It's crazy to reinvent the wheel. I mean, the technical term, which is not very technical, is reusable code. And the same thing is, if you use the same, for example, study entry or randomization form, if you do that, then I can give you the code for that actual versus projected graph, and you're done. Bingo. And it shouldn't matter if it's in RedCap or it's in Velos or it's in Qualtrics. And then again, you know, obviously it has to be programmed in whatever system you're going to do. But all of these things, as we program them, they should go into a library and be available for use by you or by me.
Are there any plans to integrate Epic into these EDWPDC systems, or maybe use one of Epic's research modules or anything like that?
Yeah, there's a lot of talk and a little action. I attended a meeting to try to integrate into Velos 3 years ago, but in fairness, it has heated up. I don't know if you guys know that there's been a new person hired in population health, Michael Cantor, who is whose title is Clinical Research Informatics, Director of Clinical Research Informatics. And I believe, don't quote me, but I believe one of the things he's trying to do, this core is going to be working with him, if not reporting to him, I'm not sure yet. And he's told me one of his primary objectives is to do that. We've actually created a data management committee in the Department of Neurology. And one of the and there's another subcommittee that's specifically dedicated to how they can use Epic for research purposes. So, and Greg Fromell, who's in the Office of Science Administration, Greg Fromell is working with that group, and they already are doing some things, like they can schedule, you probably can too, I don't know Epic, but you guys could probably say, they're already scheduling research visits, they already can schedule activities that they know aren't billable by putting the right billable codes and things in. Do you guys want to comment on that? No? Yeah. So the real answer to your question is yes, there's a real need for it. And the real objective is again, to save work. For example, demographics don't really change for the most part. I guess sexual orientation could, but your date of birth and that doesn't change. Laboratory values, all that type of stuff. Diagnosis maybe, but we want to be able to pull that stuff out of Epic into a research database and not reinvent the wheel and not collect it. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Yeah, I commented as I spoke. So we developed a registry for pediatric neuro-oncology, and I'm trying to hire a data manager now. I designed the thing in RedCap, but I spoke to a colleague at UT Southwestern who was in sort of a similar situation. They used to have an old IBM database, and now they actually transitioned to Epic. And he told me one of the problems with this that they have is that you know, in certain instances they would like to enter research results into their registry. For example, if they do a non-CLIA certified molecular pathology test or something like that, that technically is not supposed to go into the official medical record. But the problem that they have now is that the research database they have as part of EPIC or registry or whatever you call it, they're not allowed to put this information that is considered research data that's not supposed to be going to the medical record into that EPIC database. And so
Aren't you guys doing something similar?
That's where EPIC falls, right? So getting things, I mean, you call it a research part of EPIC, but it's not really. And only a medical professional can enter anything into EPIC. I mean, at the very least, a nurse practitioner or a PA. So Jim, I mean, you're familiar with the problems here, as
I haven't become familiar with that yet. I haven't.
Is that true that only a medical, I mean,
that is absolutely.
But a nurse will enter the allergies.
Well, a nurse is a medical professional.
Sorry.
Right.
Nurse is included, okay.
Right, so a nurse can.
Yeah.
But if I have research personnel and we collect certain data as part of standard care, and I still can't get much cooperation from the EPIC people in terms of building a place for it, because we want it to be part of the medical record. It's really what we consider important to treatment.
Right. And if the patient requests a copy of the entire medical record, they will also get all this.
They will get everything in that, of course.
So then that is a problem, because you couldn't put the research result in it that is, you know, not
right.
to be
So what
part
we
of
do,
the official medical record.
so you got to separate the two. So we have a parallel database and maybe a study database.
Well, there's two different things going on here, okay? There's actually many things.
Many things, right?
Okay? First of all, there's the issue of who can do what. That's a policy issue. That's not a technical issue, okay? Then there's the issue of where does it go, okay? And that's not a technical issue, because you can make it go wherever you want it to go. So again, in my mind, well, I shouldn't say that. There has to be work that gets done. But you know, you could still direct it to come through EPIC and be stored somewhere else. Again, so that initially becomes a policy issue, but then it becomes a technical and an operational issue. But so all of those things are going on, and the real, I mean, what you guys are addressing is you want it to be standard of care.
Certainly.
So whether or not it goes into the medical record or goes into the research database, again, has to be discussed, as is who's allowed to enter it. But if you're collecting research data, it shouldn't have to be, I'm going to be out of turn, shouldn't have to be a medical professional. You have research professionals. That's what they do.
EPIC is absolutely rigid about that.
Well,
and
is
I
that
don't know
EPIC
if
or
it's
is that
EPIC
is that
or
a
it's
local policy?
NYU.
It's a local policy. It can't be EPIC. EPIC here. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the problem with having, you know, two parallel databases is like when you want to do statistics on the medical record and the parallel database. In the sense that suppose you wanted to say, well, does this person have more heart attacks because we know that XYZ gene is overexpressed or something like that, right? Sure, you can program it, but you would be forever again programming on two databases.
No, but what you got to do is you pull the two into a study database.
Yes.
Right? So you
That's
create
what
a study database.
So
No, but it can be done both ways. What he's saying is it's easier to all in one database. Of course,
sure.
Of course, you're right. You're right. But then the issue is what's allowed to go where. I mean, what we're trying to do is go the other way. What we need to do is we need to pull out what we need from EPIC and put it in the research database for that reason, because now it's all together. It's all together, and it saves the data collection, the data, the whole data capture, the data entry, and it should be clean. So it saves the whole process I just described up there by pulling it out, and it is in one database. But you can also share But the trick is you gotta know who's the research participant and where
So
they
is
are.
it currently
What database.
possible that,
Right,
that the EPIC information is pulled into the research database?
That's one of the primary objectives here, yes, is to pull the epic.
But we're
data.
not doing it yet, or we
No,
are?
not at all. It's only in the talks
Okay.
pages. Only in the
Okay.
talks
Oh,
pages.
okay, so for, okay.
It's only in the talks pages. Yeah.
But that would be, like you say, a
That would be
really
the-
useful thing to everybody, I think.
Right, and it's not trivial from a policy and procedures perspective. It's not. But to be honest, it's gonna have to happen. Because nobody can afford to keep doing all this stuff 2 and 3 times. And then right now, that's what we're doing. And also, again, I'll probably speak out of turn, but different departments are going to have different standards of what they feel should be in the medical record. And there needs to be some flexibility to allow them to implement those standards subject to regulatory and whatever other policy and procedures there are locally here at William Gum. But there's got to be more integration. The term that's used all over the place, I'll just throw this out so you hear it, is interoperability. And everyone says we have interoperability. Well, I say everyone's full of baloney. Because you don't have interoperability unless the data is standardized in terms of definitions and everything else, and you can really pull it together across multiple platforms and multiple systems. Because you're always integrating programmatically one or the other, you are. But that's where those data standards come in that I mentioned earlier. And until we have those, it's difficult to have interoperability. Other questions?
So how is the PHI issue going to be sorted out? Because
That's a good question.
stuff which is in Epic obviously is
Yeah.
in Epic and
Well,
somewhere.
what I try to do in research databases is completely avoid PHI. You can't necessarily do it in registries, but in the studies I do, I only have a unique identifier. And to answer your question, you have to know who the patient is, but when you pull it out, Ross, you're not pulling any PHI. You're not pulling any
okay,
PHI and
so
putting it into research, if you do it right.
You've got John Doe in pediatrics, and their data is going into pediatrics, into Epic. And then you've got some test that you're running and you're putting it into a database which is not Epic.
It's a research
And so
database.
now you've got to pull the two together and you have to have an identifier which will connect the two together.
If you're integrating databases, yeah, you do, but pulling it together, that identifier that pulls it together doesn't have to be in the database. It can be in the program that pulls it together. So you can still avoid you can't totally avoid it, you gotta be careful with your program. But I really, to be honest, it's almost literally impossible to avoid HIPAA in any database the way they've defined it these days. I think it's a bit over the edge because I even have to hide, when I put data out to a National Institute of Health platform, because we have to do data sharing for everything, they even consider visit date an identifier. So if you're getting down to that level, but I don't put any names, any of that in the database. I don't put no initial. I used to use initials as a separate verifier. I quit years ago because it started raising all the issues of HIPAA. But if you are going to use identifiers, then you got to meet all the HIPAA stuff. It has to be on different servers, different everything.
And that usually has to all be specified in your IRB application.
Exactly.
I mean, they want to know how you're going to do it, how you're going to pull the information from the medical record, from your study database, and then analyze it in a de-identified form.
And I've had discussions with the IRB. I don't think we're there yet, but there's actually discussions about whether or not we shouldn't have a little mini questionnaire that makes sure they're taking care of HIPAA. And another mini questionnaire that knows they're really doing data integrity monitoring. I'm actually doing that at Nathan Klein. I have a checklist. When someone wants to do a grant, they have to. It's one page, and from that one page, I can tell if they need, who's going to access the data. Do they need to be worried about HIPAA? And we provide consultations then before the grant goes in, so you don't get blown away. Yes.
Can you share that, Jim? Is that shareable?
It was in my business plan, but I'm happy to share it.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
It's public.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, the thing really is that you have to have your you have to have policies, and then someone has to agree on how to operationalize them, and so that people can follow the cookbook in terms of how they're doing this, and finish up with something which is, for the institutions, in the institution's view, meets all the data integrity and privacy requirements.
Correct.
And these may not be
And
identical.
security.
And these may not be the same as, for example, in Cornell, Columbia. Very often these are institutional, but you've got to have them. Otherwise, no one will have the courage to actually say, yes, you can do this. You always run some who has some reason why they're not prepared to put their own sort of John Hancock on the line and say that this is okay.
Well, I think that's true. And just to put it into perspective, you have to realize, I mean, this program, which was just recently approved, is the first step in that direction. NYU has not had anything like this at all in the past. It's sort of been, you know, here's a website, or here's a URL, go find RedCap, or do this or whatever, or come to this. So we're only in, you know, to be honest, we've come a long way, but we're only really in the infancy stages here. We really are. We need that medical record data, we need these policies, and we need more support. I keep saying it. It took me 3 years to get this through. You need more support for the researchers. And I think, I mean, as you guys all know, one of the major goals here is to increase our rank in funding. This is a way to do it, you know. And again, a quality data management program is not going to get you funded, but it will increase funding. You know, for example, my specialization is mental health. Almost any big study that's come out of mental health in the last 3 years, my group does. Because we're a known quantity, and we're trying to make NYU the same brand name. We do this well, we do it right, and getting this first pharmaceutical company to come is I think, one of the big steps in doing that. Anything else? Okay, thank you for listening.